we're not going to have a typical sermon. We are going to have, basically, it's not a travelogue either. It'll be more like I don't know if your families used to do this, but Friday nights my dad would pull out the slide projector. Remember those old slides, the trays you'd put on the slide projector and you'd show slides? And we would talk about our trips, and it was a lot of fun. So we're going to do that today, but before we do that, I want you to turn in your Bibles to Isaiah chapter 49. Isaiah chapter 49. And I want you to at least have this one thought. Because you know, Markham Woods has a tradition of taking mission trips. We've gone to many different countries. We've done building projects. We've done VBS. And today we're going to talk about Ukraine and what we just did in Ukraine. And I want you to think about this. Verse 5, chapter 49, verse 5, it says, "And now the Lord says," he's speaking to Israel, he says, "He who formed me in the womb to be his servant." And let's just stop there for a minute. Can you believe that? That God knew you in the womb and he knew what role you could play in the plan of salvation. And he was creating you and all of us here at Markham Woods for a certain role in saving the planet for Jesus and for God the Father. And he says this, "I've formed you in the womb to be my servant, to bring Jacob back to him and gather Israel to himself. For I am honored in the eyes of the Lord, and my God has been my strength." So what did he create us for? To bring Jacob back to him, to gather Israel to himself. That is, for the Israelites, this was their local ministry. God had in mind for them to minister to the other tribes of Israel because they were Israel. So they would minister to their fellow brothers. They would have Sabbath school classes and community service projects and Bible teaching seminars and pathfinders and young people's meetings. But is that it? And don't get me wrong, we just elected Chris Hauk as our community services director for Markham Woods. There are lots of things going on here. Russ Durham has some wonderful ministries for the community. Clinton Acosta and the whole team that goes down the first Monday of the month to feed the homeless. And this is just to speak of a few of them. And Chris, when she came in with ideas, boy, she even had a bigger list. So we're going to have a whole Sabbath in September where we talk about how we're serving the community here in Orlando. We're going to do that here at Markham Woods, but that's for another time. Because this is what God says. Look at verse 6. He says, "It is too small a thing for you to be my servant, to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back those of Israel I have kept. I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring my salvation to the ends of the earth." Did you catch that, church? If we only concentrate on local ministries, we aim too small. We sell God short. He's the God of the universe. He's the God of the whole earth. And he says, when I created you for local ministries, which I did, which we should be all about, serving here in the church, serving our community. If that was it, God says that's too small. I can do more through you and with you. I am proud that Markham Woods, it's one of the main things that drew me to this church, that mission trips are of value. I know I'm looking around for some of the people that have led many of the mission trips. I know the Yost have been very involved, and many of you have gone on mission trips. And why do we do that? Shouldn't we just be thinking about here in Orlando? No, we do it because God can use us all around the world. So today we're going to talk about our trip. I'm going to invite Stacy Robb up. We were hoping Elena Kutlerova would be here with us this morning, but her family was ill, so she's quarantining, as many of you are. I looked at the viewership. We have many more of you online this Sabbath than normal, so we welcome all of you. We're glad you get to be part of this journey that we took into Ukraine. You can see why Ukraine's flag is the way it is. It's a land of blue sky and grain fields. We didn't get to that central part of Ukraine where there are lots of grain fields, but we went to the western part of Ukraine. We flew into Romania. We left here a couple Sundays ago, flew to Chicago, then to London, then to Bucharest, Romania. Got to Bucharest, Romania, and then we took a trip from about here, where Bucharest is, all the way up here to the border, which that was Stacy's favorite part of the trip, I think. Right, Stacy?
It was. Stacy was the only one in the car that had no seatbelt, and the driver called the road of death, I think he called it. They drive a little different there.
Yeah, it's about 3 lanes for 4 lanes of traffic.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can talk to you about that another time. So we went in here to right about this area, and this is the area of Ukraine that we were at, very far from where the front lines are, where things are going. But that's where most of the refugees and IDPs have come, to internally displaced peoples. And that's the one region of Ukraine that hadn't received a missile hit until the days we were there. The fighter jet did shoot down a missile over our area somewhere, but we didn't hear about it. We didn't even know about it. And it actually felt very safe there. So we left here. That's Markham Woods, our 26 suitcases that we had for the 6 of us to pile on to a couple vehicles and head out to MCO and get on the airplane. We packaged them all with blue tape so that we would see them. Stacy and I were watching for them in Chicago to make sure they'd gotten onto the plane. We weren't sure if all 26 would make it with us, but we got to Bucharest. And how many of the suitcases made it, Stacy?
Right, all 26 of the suitcases came out first. I mean, I'm sure the other passengers were not happy. They had to wait for us to load 26 suitcases, but it was a big relief because we were quite worried from Chicago to London to Romania.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure we didn't have any.
We didn't even have enough carts in the airport. We were dragging those suitcases around, and we were so thankful to all of you. Those were the suitcases of the children's supplies that you came to the church and donated, of medications that were given by Advent Health and by other donors. We had well over $10,000 worth of medications, plus thousands of dollars of Matchbox cars, crayons, markers, paper. We stuffed those things. Even the lady at the airport here in Orlando, she's like, I warned you, that one's a little overweight. If there's another one, I'm going to charge you. And then the next one came through, was overweight. And she's like, I warned you, that's the last time. Like, sorry, our church members were very zealous for giving things, and we wanted to get in as much as possible. So we made it up to the border, and we met the ADRA Romania director for that section of Romania, the Moldovan section of Romania it's called. Picked us up. We put all the suitcases in his vehicle. Adrian, the guy standing next to him in the middle, there standing next to me, was a young pastor. He has a 5-church district right out there on the border, and he's been intimately involved in helping the Ukrainians through this crisis. So why don't you tell us a little bit, Stacy, the pictures on the right there, what does that represent?
So this is where the death road continues. You see, we're driving, this is a still shot on the right. We're actually driving about 60 miles an hour down the road, and this poor trucker had just stepped out of his vehicle, and we're driving between 2 rows of trucks. Anyway, so this is the border at Petrom, where the gas station sign is, and they dropped the pin. The trucks were lined up from the pin to that gas station sign. They were lined up to cross the border.
11 miles.
11 miles, and it was
trucks.
the same on the other side of the border going out, right?
So yeah, that was our first sign that we were entering a war conflict. All the ports are closed on the Black Sea, so everything that's coming into Ukraine is coming in via truck, through Turkey, other European countries, and it takes about 3 to 4 days to cross to get in, and it takes a week to cross to get out of Ukraine. So it's very difficult to get things in and out of Ukraine.
Yeah. And people don't want to do it. Unless they're an NGO, they don't want to hold up their livelihood with these trucks just sitting there, and not being able to move. So that's part of their hardship. Yeah.
So we were alerted to the fact, not everything is normal, obviously, there in Ukraine. It's weighing on everybody, and it's visible from the first moment we entered the country. We got to Chernivtsi. We got to it's called the Bukovina Conference, And there were people waiting for us. And Stacy, do you want to tell us who was waiting for us there at the...
I do. That is Vasily and Stan is what I'm going to call him. And they are two conference leaders. Stan is the union conference leader, correct? And, as soon as we pulled into the warehouse, they immediately started unloading, along with their staff that was there. They within 15 minutes, had the vehicle unloaded, sorted. Once the doctor got in, he started going through Advent Health's generous donation of prescription medication that they had sent with us. And so that's what that is. They're very efficient at sorting. And
by the way, these are the two gentlemen on the left that you will have an opportunity to meet this coming Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. They will be here right in our church telling. Stan on the right is actually in charge of the whole work for all of Ukraine. And he has incredible stories of what it was like from the very first days of the war and the trauma that our Adventists and the whole country has gone through. And it's an incredible privilege that they're willing to come and take some time after the General Conference session in St. Louis to come and spend a few days with us and share with our congregation. They're very appreciative of what Markham Woods and Advent Health and College View Church in Nebraska did.
Yeah, they really are. They're very uplifted and encouraged, like Doug said, from your generosity, your donations, and Doug's leadership. I was going to wait to say this to the end, but I'll say it again. Pastor Doug showed incredible leadership, not only for our trip, but in ministering to the staff, to the conference leaders, to the doctors, to the teachers. The children loved him. I mean, he was just a godsend and a great blessing. So we're very, very grateful to have Pastor Doug lead us out.
I did not pay her to say that.
He did not, but you could say amen. You could say amen. and
well,
truly, we couldn't have done it without Doug. Doug spoke the language. He knew the people that knew the people. None of that trip could have happened without the way the Lord coordinated your group together.
Well, it was amazing. A lot of these people were actually the medical person here, Yura, you'll see him in the red there on the left-hand corner. I was actually classmates with him studying for the Masters of Public Health through Loma Linda Field School at Zauksky. And he's the one in charge of the Angelina Clinic in Kiev, and they have 3 mobile clinics now that they're using. He was the one, and Stacy, do you want to tell us what Yura told you, because the top picture there is of the tourniquets we purchased?
Right, so we thought we were going to serve orphans and clinics, outside the war zone, but Yuri came up immediately and saw the boxes and boxes and boxes of tourniquets that were donated from Advent Health, I believe. He opened them up and he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "You don't know how many people you've just saved their life." And he took them to the clinic, they packed trauma kits, and within 48 hours, they were on the ground with the soldiers in a special division of the soldiers that are serving on the front line, and they're the self-administer type of tourniquets that they need to help keep them alive. And anyway, I just thought it was precious that he was grateful for something like that, so thank you.
And they were so grateful to you and to us. I can show it to you if you'd like. I have it in my office, a flag that was signed by some of the soldiers from the front lines thanking the Adventist Clinic for their help in saving lives of people that were just needing basic medication. So this is the medical clinic. Like, as I mentioned, in the bottom-hand corner, I did not realize that my other fellow classmate is leading the clinic in Chernivtsi. So it was quite a reunion. We had a good time seeing each other. But these guys are very committed. Doctors in Ukraine make $200 a month. And they could try to go elsewhere and have a more lucrative financial career. But they're committed, and both of them are so committed, they're talking to me about their plans, what they want to do, how they want to help more people. Yura, the one on the left in the blue shirt, he's the one that got 3 mobile medical clinics. They have a dental clinic, an OBGYN clinic, and a pharmaceutical clinic that they send out to the villages in the areas. They had to evacuate Kiev when it was under siege. They came to Chernivtsi, and they began to service the territory around there because that's where all the internally displaced people, IDPs we'll refer to them as, were staying in villages with people in their farmhouses. And when they show up to these villages, the whole village comes out because there's no medical service for them right now. Over 200 hospitals, is what they told me, have been destroyed. And now with the supply chain issues of getting medications in, people are literally dying for medical care. So when they come out, they say they become the most popular people in the village for a year. They park right there by the Adventist church, and all of a sudden the whole village shows up, and people come from the surrounding countryside to receive medical help. The lady on top, Natalia, she was a vivacious lady.
She's a doctor as well. She's a general practitioner, she said. And she was so thrilled and so excited. She wanted me to say to all of you, thank you. We could not do this without you. And she said it much better than I do, but she was so appreciative. And of course, Julia and Oleg had met her on their trip as well. And she told me, she's a young woman. She told me, she said, this has hurt her emotionally, just going through what she's going through. So she wants your prayers. She appreciates your donations. And I mean, that just really, that's how they all felt. They all felt very grateful for what was given and for what, encouragement they got from our participation.
I believe you can see her on the video. If you watch our online presentation later today on the video that you prepared that ran 5 minutes before our service, she actually gives a little testimony and thanks everybody, not just at Markham Woods, but everybody who donated.
Correct.
To the.
Yeah, she's very grateful.
These are some of the clinics. Stacy took some pictures of. We had to be a little bit careful because they were serving people as we were there, and they wanted to show us everything. It was a bit awkward to be walking in all these medical places and the churches. The first day they showed us those institutions. We can't not talk about Willis. Willis, you remember Oleg and Julia were here a couple weeks ago before we left. And this is Oleg's cousin, Willis. They were just married in November, and the war started. Willis realized we need to evacuate people from the war zone. So what did he do? He got rid of all his life savings, over $9,000, and just started spending it on diesel and fuel and getting people out of the war zone. He's made well over 20 trips. This is his backyard. He had us over to his house on Friday night. This is his backyard here. He fills all those canisters and these barrels with fuel and puts it in the van and goes to the front lines. You can imagine if a missile did hit him, what would happen to the van with everything in there. And he brings bread and fuel. And you remember at the beginning of the war, when we began to collect funds that first weekend, and we raised over $50,000 here in this congregation, we were helping Willis. And we asked Willis, how many people have you saved, do you think? And he said, well, I have no idea. He says, with all the fuel we got, he said, usually we have anywhere from 12, I think 25 people he's had in that van. This is the van he uses, by the way, and this is what they wear. So they wanted us to feel what it was like. So when we went over to his house, we donned the gear, the flak jacket and the helmets. And those are serious helmets and very weighty. And then we rode around in his van. And that's a 3-day round trip now to the front lines and back. And they didn't wear the flak jackets all the time, but when they're close to the front lines, and he has video of bombs exploding right next to his car and missiles coming overhead as he's going in to take people. Willis and his team have saved well over 2,000 people from the front lines and brought them in. And he wanted us to thank Markham Woods for doing that. You've helped be a part of that, so thank you.
Yeah, amen.
We went to, how many churches did we go to?
So we probably went to, one day alone, we went to 3 or 4 churches. So maybe 5 or 6 churches total, 2 hospitals, and 1 sanitarium, and then the conference center and the school. And so...
And how many empty rooms do you remember seeing, Stacey?
Well, for like the supplementary rooms, there were none. The sanctuaries were open now for service, but they all had bedrooms and bedding and makeshift dorms for their internally displaced people. They were still housing. They had kitchens that were full. They had storerooms that were full. The green bedding, this is a government facility. That was actually a children's hospital that's housing orphans from, the war zone and that are injured. And yeah, I mean, everybody, even the church members in their own homes were housing people. So this is their long-term situation, is that they're going to be taking care of people that have lost their houses are gone, their families are gone in some situations, and they can't leave the country.
In fact, when we got to this place, the government-run one, we were trying to engage with the children, and we'll have a picture of that here in a minute. But they told us many of these kids aren't ready really to talk to people. Many of them had spent 30 to 35 days in basements, hadn't seen sunlight for over a month, just hearing bombs falling, and wondering if they were going to live, to see the next day. So many of them weren't really ready to engage us, but they've crammed everybody. You can just see, this is also like a little warehouse here on this corner where people that need help can come, anybody in the town. So every church, every school, every sanitarium, every building we went into is a refugee center or an IDP center of where people are coming and getting help. And this is all organized and run by the church. ADRA helps, but it's the church members, it's the pastors that are running this. We got to meet some interesting people. Do you want to
Sure.
talk about Andre with your mic up?
Andre was at one of the churches. He invited us into his room. He said, "Come into my room," and it was very tidy. It looked like a soldier's room. He had everything lined up, and his family photos were on the wall. And as Mick and Pastor Doug started to engage and talk with him, and he told his story, he said, "Let me show you a video." And he showed us a surveillance video of his home being bombed and destroyed. And right before that bomb had hit the building, there was a little old lady that was walking into the building, and he was destroyed. Not for his home, but for the people in his village that were killed. 15 of his friends, he said he had witnessed be killed from whatever region he was from. I don't remember. But I do know that his spirit was strong. He was willing to stand and pray with us. He had tears in his eyes when he told that story. His only goal in life was to go back and take humanitarian aid to the front line. He wasn't looking to stay safe in this church in Chernovici, which is a nice little area. Everybody's out shopping, and there's, cafes, and it's very peaceful. He wanted to go to the front lines and continue to risk his life to take food, medicine, whatever aid he could take to those that were defending his country. So we were proud to pray with him. He wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist, but I know he was choked up and very grateful to the pastor of that church and to Pastor Doug for praying with him.
And he even refused any financial help. He just wanted to give back. It's one of the things you see how people bond together. That picture on the far right bottom corner is an example of things that people donated. I don't know if you know this, but Romania and Ukraine are the two largest countries for Adventism in Europe. There are 60,000 Adventists in Romania, about 40,000 in Ukraine. Romania and other countries, Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, have responded very well. And I was talking to the Romanian pastor. He brought with the ADRA tons and tons, literally tons and tons of produce. And this is some of the things they brought: compote, this juice, and berries, and peaches, and all kinds of fruit. And they've just been sending that in for free, and it's enabled the Seventh-day Adventist Church The Seventh-day Adventist Church, just in that conference, had over 3,000 internally displaced people they were caring for. They were feeding them 3 times a day. They were giving them a place to stay. And the church members, because sometimes, I'm saying this because sometimes we have the idea in the Adventist Church, oh, we'll just give some money to ADRA, ADRA will take care of it. Had ADRA just been working alone with their few employees that they have, and not the thousands and thousands of church members, not 10%, 10, maybe 20% would have been done what has been done. It was common church members and pastors and the leaders that we were talking with that just stepped up. They said, we're going to do this. And non-Adventists, Adventists, it didn't matter. Everybody just joined in, and Andre's an example of that. And you can see they have to make these rooms, they have to hang curtains there just to give people privacy to change and just to offer some type of living quarters for them that's acceptable. This is a school. Do you want to tell us about the school?
Yeah, this is a very well-run school, and it was near the conference center. I think now they have orphans there, internally displaced people and families. And the principal on the right, she's has the white shirt on. She was very energetic and gave us a wonderful tour and had her children sing for us and talk to us in English and welcome us. But she showed us their cafeteria, and these young ladies at the top, those are their teachers. That's the table of teachers who are probably not older than 24 years old.
Yeah.
And every classroom was organized, and they have outdoor activities, which I thought was very healthy. Sirens went off one of the days that we were there, and their protocol is to take the children into the basement, even if you can't see a missile. If there's something coming into the region, they have a habit of taking them to the basement, but I think that you see.
And just to be clear, so you don't think lots of missiles were coming into our region, there were, anytime a missile was headed towards that region, it could be 500 miles away, they turn on the sirens. So we heard the air raid sirens.
Yeah,
their
defense system was very good. They shot down every missile that came in.
Three of the children at this school are from Mariupol, and they were telling me that they're having a very difficult time adapting, and the school's giving them special services to help them deal with just getting back to normal life after being rescued from Mariupol. They also had refugees staying there. They've just cleared them out. The older children go to school online. That was just the younger children, because during wartime, the older kids cannot be in school. Then we went out one day to your camp, they call it. It's the Seventh-day Adventist camp for that conference. It's usually a summer camp. It wasn't built for winter. But you remember we talked about, and I showed a video of how some of your donations went to rescue children from 3 different orphanages. These are those kids. There are 180 orphan kids at this camp, and another 100 supporting staff, volunteers, paid staff that are helping. So there are about 300 people on the grounds of this camp. They showed us the kitchen, and do you remember those loaves of bread? Remember from the beginning of the war when I showed a video of when we were sending in 2,000 loaves of bread a day into Kiev and other regions that were under siege at that time? This is where they were being made. These 4-pound loaves of bread. They're serious loaves of bread. They're not just, they're not your American Wonder Bread. These can feed a few people for a while. They have to feed, I think they told us they feed them, I think government regulations, because these are government orphanage, they have to feed the kids 5 times a day. So this kitchen crew gets in at about 6 in the morning and leaves about 9 or 10 at night every day and feeds 300 people. I think 2 of those are snacks, 3 meals a day for the children there. And this is Igor. Igor is the pastor. And the conference president was telling me ever since he was a young boy, before he even went into ministry, he's had a burden for orphans. And he has dedicated his life to working with these orphans, and he's just really a neat guy. And they've got all kinds of projects. They're trying to make that camp so that the kids can live there in the winter, because they have no idea when they'll be able to go home. This is also the camp, if you remember, I think Stacy had in one of her videos, where Some of the kids, obviously their parents aren't in their lives right now. Some of them are, have other issues and can't have them, and some have died. But 3 of the caretakers for the kids were in a car that got assaulted, and 3 of the caretakers ended up getting killed in the war as well. So not only had they lost their parents, but they'd also lost some of their caretakers. And Igor and the crew was doing a great job. When I got there, this little girl came up to me and she just wanted a hug. And I just opened my arms and she wanted to be held. So I got to hold her for about probably 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. She just wanted attention. And Stacy, why don't you tell us about a doctor we met there?
Yeah, Dr. Greg Shea. He's a pediatrician or a pulmonary pediatrician from San Francisco. And he is not a Seventh-day Adventist, but he volunteers with Advent Help. Is that it?
Correct,
Advent
yeah.
Help, which is a medical missionary group that focuses mainly on the Middle East, and now they're probably expanding around the world. But he served as a relief pediatrician that week, and he was very happy to see some Americans so he could talk to people, but he loved the way the Adventists run their medical missionary work. And so he volunteers. When we were at the conference office, we met 2 other doctors that were also not Adventists and had traveled to serve in Ukraine and Moldova, because right now Dr. Shea is also serving in Moldova. But he had a lot of good things to say, and did a short presentation on the video that we're sharing with you guys this service.
We wanted to share with you, because some of you gave, Matchbox cars and all these Crayolas, and we wanted to give those out and take video and bring it back. We realized, though, we did it at one place a little bit, and the fight broke out.
Yeah.
So we realized we couldn't do it without pandemonium, and we gave them everything and said, listen, you guys figure out how to distribute this stuff. We'd love to have, video of it, but they're going to do it privately so that there's no... no more fights amongst the kids about getting what. But what we did give them is we bought more ice cream than I've ever bought in my life, and we handed out ice cream to everybody, and the kids were absolutely thrilled to get an ice cream bar there on...
It was a hot day, too.
So do you want to tell us about this institution?
Right. This is their sanitarium, which is a healthy lifestyle center. And it's interesting. They have a 2-year wait list to get in here. I'm impressed. I don't know that we have one like that. But they have health programs, and they have a spa and a retreat, and they teach healthy living. Well, they've converted this to housing for the independently or internally displaced people. But they continued their health programs. So one of the doctors there who does health programs is a refugee himself, correct?
Correct.
And he was doing a presentation when I got there, and they took me in to take photographs and video of him, and everybody was dressed really nice, and it was a Thursday afternoon, and they're all dressed like it's Sabbath. And it's voluntary. You don't have to go to these meetings. But as a result, there were many people who were baptized through their health programs. And, I just thought that was such a blessing that they continued with that activity. And you can see it's a beautiful country village. They're building another facility next to it, which hopefully they can use to house more people. And they have their own garden. They have their own construction site. They have their own wood. They have, their own industrial tools to build, so they're very self-sufficient. They probably just need the supplies to continue.
So some of the people have left. Some of the IDPs have either gone home or gone other places, but the church is still having to care for about 1,500 people, and this is one of the great needs, and one of the things they would need support in is building these structures that would be temporary, longer-term housing, because every church, every sanitarium, every school is crawling with people. In fact, the center where we were based out of had 110 people for one bathroom. So you can imagine the challenges that would present. And this place as well, they can't take any new clients for health ministry because the whole place is filled with IDPs. I just want to say something about this pastor. That pastor is supposed to be retired. The conference won't let him. he agreed not to, but he's not the only one that was ready for retirement but is still serving and still wants to serve in the Lord's work there. It was very inspiring. Then we went, this is the government orphanage that we went to, and Stacy, you want to talk a little bit about how Mick got their attention?
Yeah, Mick is our youth pastor from College View Seventh-day Adventist Church, a friend of yours, right? And Mick just jumped right in. He had his Bible in his back pocket, and he had a little deck of cards, and he started engaging with those teenagers. Elena helped to interpret, and I think Pastor Doug did. But he took those cards, just like you would with any youth ministry, and he turned it into a spiritual message. And pretty soon, they were giggling and chuckling and laughing because he had found the card. And then once he had their attention, he would give them a spiritual nugget. And so I'm just really happy that he took that mission on, and nobody asked him to do it. He just took it on.
So the next, and Stacy, why don't you tell the story of the boy on the left?
So the boy on the left, we had brought a bag of stuffed toys and animals, and everybody wanted them. And I was really surprised at how comforting it was to them, even the teenage boys and the preteen boys. They all grabbed a toy, and they were hugging them. And that boy in particular, he wouldn't really look at you or engage, but the one on the left with the stuffed animal, he just held on to that thing for the entire time that we were there. And so, I think that it brought him comfort.
And this was a place where some of the kids hadn't seen daylight for about 30 days.
Yeah.
Now, I brought Nicholas up here because the Markham Woods kids were some of the most touching stories we had. We had Ian and Zoe. They came into the office, and they were telling Paul Riley all about the war in Ukraine and how they were going to help the children there. And we were so touched by that. And I know many of the other children in the congregation brought in things to give to the kids there. But Nicholas, right here, he gave us the most difficult assignment of anybody. He brought in those shoes, and he said, listen, I want these shoes given to a boy named Nicholas. And I thought, couldn't you have just said some boy in Ukraine? But we're going to have to go searching high and low all over Ukraine to find some boy named Nicholas with those exact size feet. So we got to this first orphanage. Yeah, and I forgot the part. They were trying to chase us out.
They were saying, get out, get out, get out. Your time is up. And we're calling to Elena and Dan, and they had a mission with shoes. We didn't know what it was, but...
Yeah, so they said, do you have any Nicholases here? And so they called this boy, and Elena said, let's try these shoes on. And sure enough, the shoes fit exactly. So Nicholas, let's give Nicholas a big hand.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yeah, that little boy sat there on a curb the entire time. He was just this quiet little, sweet boy. So he was so blessed to get your shoes. And he knew that he got them from a Nicholas, too.
He was very happy about that.
Thank you.
So you can either stay up here for the rest of the presentation, or you can go back. It's up to you.
He's free.
Yeah, I figured that. We were hoping that Elena would be here with us, but she's home. Many of her family members are sick, so she's quarantining. She just got back this last Wednesday, I think, and she stayed an extra week. But we had a providential thing happen. This is just... to show how God works. We were out going to the government orphanages with one of the Adventist pastors. He regularly goes to 7 different orphanages and helps these kids. He's just a wonderful Adventist pastor. And we were at one of his churches, and Lena said, wait a minute, I think my husband's mother's sister fled to this village. And he said, well, what's her name? And she told him. And he said, yes, she goes to my church now, and she lives just down the road. So we went down the road, and it was a wonderful meeting. She's battling cancer right now, and we were able to help her with some finances. And she did not want us to leave. She said we needed to stay overnight with her at her place, and we shouldn't even go. But we just thought, wow, we were out in the Carpathian Mountains, just out in the middle of nowhere, and here's our own Markham Woods church members, relatives, and we had a very nice time. Also, Elena got to see one of her former church members that she would attend church with in Bucha, where all the atrocities occurred, where our Adventist University is. And he was also a refugee at the center where we were headquartered at. Then she went to Irpin, which is, again, there by Bucha. And she actually spent last Sabbath with them. We were hoping she would be here and be able to tell us about that. But that center picture that she sent, that was, I believe, the youth center for the church there in Irpin that was totally bombed out. She showed pictures. You can see the bridge on the left that was shown on news that was totally wiped out. And all she told me was, I talked to our church members, and what they went through is just beyond comprehension of what they had to live through. But they're now back meeting. And by the way, you would think maybe the church would just say, we're just going to lie low here for a while. They've already baptized over 130 people across Ukraine since the war started.
Amen.
And most of it is people that see how the church has come to life and is helping the community, and when they say, we want to live like that. In fact, we were at a meal like this after we went to one of those orphanages, and Stacy, you remember we got the pastor we were with that I was just telling you about that goes to these orphanages, he got a call from a lady, and he said, just a minute, Doug, can you translate? He said, I want to tell the group what she just said. She just called, and she asked, was that group of Americans, were they believers? And he said, yeah, they were believers, and that is believers in Jesus. And she says, if they're like that, I want to be like that too. Can I start to study the Bible? We only stayed there 45 minutes, an hour. We felt bad. We wanted to stay longer. These were kids with disabilities, orphans with disabilities. And we have no pictures of them. The government wouldn't allow us to take any pictures. And just by the church rising up and saying, we're not going to be afraid. We're going to serve. People are responding. These are some of the cooks that cooked for us. Incredible meals. We were kind of planning on dieting while we were there. We thought food might be scarce. That did not happen. We were eating 3 very good meals a day. And the hospitality, do you want to mention hospitality?
Yeah, the hospitality. Every place we went and left, they greeted us warmly. They had good food, and they made sure that we knew that we were appreciated, and generously gave gifts. Pastor Doug has a gift he didn't bring out, but it's kind of scary looking.
It's a mace.
It's a mace.
It's given to anyway, yeah.
It's a fundraising kit now.
Yeah.
So, no, we were overwhelmed by their gratitude and their skill and just their heartfelt love and appreciation for us just being there. We didn't feel like we were doing anything. Of course, we had donated financially, and you had donated financially, and we physically went there to document what was going on. But they were so touched and encouraged that people cared on this side of the world about them.
And by the way, this church, that boy that's holding that 10-pound loaf of bread, this is Ukrainian tradition. And when they did this, I said, guys, what are you doing? We came here to we're not tourists. Mm-hmm. They're like, sorry, we can't help it. This is our culture. We have to, it's like. But this church has gone through so much. In the last 2 years, they were telling us the story. 2 of the youth were killed in an explosion when they were camping in the mountains a few years ago. You maybe read about this in the Adventist Review. They set a campfire on a World War I mine. And 2 of the young adults, actually about 25 years old, were killed. And they were just exemplary youth, and they were telling us how because of that, the community had seen how the Adventist church had reacted and how this family and how people had come to the church. And that boy that gave us that bread, he was involved in that trip. They showed us, again, some of their needs are they have these buildings where they're trying to get more permanent housing set up, and they have all these building projects going, but trying to get materials, and then with the church suffering financially as it is, through the war, it's a challenge. This is another pastor who told me, he's there in the blue over here. This guy does everything. He's a pastor, and he can build any building and do anything on the building, and he's just this worker. He works from morning till night, and he was showing us everything he was doing. They were trying to get 20 refugees into this upper, I think they were going to have it done like this weekend, if I remember right. They were aiming to have it done, and he was just working like crazy. He's another guy that could be on retirement, and he's not, because he feels the call of the Lord to help out. These are, the guy on the right, you'll get to meet on Wednesday. This is Vasily. He's the one, he's a great guy. All of them are great guys, but he was the one that told us, Stacy did an interview with him, and he said, you know what, I called up my pastors at the beginning of the war, and he told me later, he said, I think the Holy Spirit inspired me. I said, this is not a time to be afraid. This is a time to stay at your post and do your job. Out of 315 pastors in Ukraine, there are still 305 serving in the exact same spots where they were serving before the war. And he said, if anybody calls you at any time of day, it's like your boss is calling them. You do what they want. You get them to wherever they need to go. The church in his conference took in over 3,000 people, and he himself was coordinating this work with all the pastors and the lay members and getting people fed and getting food and coordinating with ADRA. It's just an inspiring work. And he told me, he said, because I asked him, he was our driver for part of the time. I said, really, you're a conference president. You don't feel like you have to be with us. He's like, I just need a little bit of a break. He said, I've been getting about 1 to 2 hours of sleep every night since the war started. The other guy is Valentin, and he was this wonderful Christian man. Again, could have retired. He was our driver when we went to the government orphanages, and he told us, or he told me, I was sitting in the front seat with him, he said, you know, I've always wanted to go to America. I wanted to move there. I've got relatives that live in Portland, Oregon, and they've been inviting me, and I was thinking, you know, right about now, I would retire and go live in America. And then he got choked up, and tears came out of his eyes, and he said, but I looked at God's people in my district, and he said, I saw most of them couldn't go anywhere. And he said, I'm not going to leave them. He said, I can't leave them. I'm going to stay with them. And I just thought, that's the spirit that we're seeing in the Ukrainian church right now that's so inspiring. You know, we went to help them, and I felt inspired.
Inspired, yes. Yeah, we all did. We were all touched, and touched by their spirit, and touched by the fact that they were not ready for the war, but yet they rose to their calling, and they hit the ground and they started doing God's work, whether it was taking care of people, evacuating people, whatever needed to be done. And it's a full-time 24/7 job, and they act as such. So it is inspiring. It is.
I encourage you to come out Wednesday night at 7. You'll be inspired to hear Stanislav and Vasily talk. I would in no way describe them as beggars. They're workers. They've got vision. They're just serving valiantly.
Yeah, they're very humble.
So we wrapped up our trip. We crossed the border to get out of Ukraine. We got up at 4:30 in the morning to have a COVID test taken to show so we could fly back to America. And we headed off to Suceava, Romania, where we were going to catch the train and have a little less eventful ride back to the airport than what we had coming out. And so we were kind of relaxing, kind of like, yes, we did our job. We're kind of back in a NATO country. Everything is back to normal. We pulled up. I think I went in and a couple other people into the train station. We got back, and Vasily, the guy I just showed you, the conference president, he had brought us there. And he was there at the van, and here was this family. And they had come up to him and asked, can we get a ride with you to Ukraine? We're trying to find a way into Ukraine, and we can't get it. We don't know how to get there. He didn't hesitate. He said, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm going that way here in just a few minutes. I'll take you. So when we got back out there, I started talking to them. It turns out they're from Kharkiv. Kharkiv is still being bombed. If you're watching news, it's still not a safe place. We asked, what are you doing? And you're going back to Kharkiv? Well, we don't know if we're going to go to Kharkiv. But they were in Hungary, and they said Hungary paid for about 3 months of their lodging, their food. But they said, we're just tired. We want to be in our homeland, so we're going back to Ukraine. Maybe we'll go to some village, find somebody to take care of us for a few months until we can go back home. Vasily took them back. And actually, some of you who donated money, some of you were coming and stuffing my pockets there that last Sabbath. We gave them some money to be able to get home. So thank you to Markham Woods for that. Then we got to the airport in Bucharest, and I heard this lady. She spoke very good Russian, and so I started talking with her. And her name is Tatiana, just like my wife. And she was going back to Odessa. And I said, Odessa? Odessa is like not far from the front lines. And she's like, yeah, I know, but only a few missiles are coming in every now and then. And she said, I just want to be with my cat and my dog. I can't be away from them. And I was in Spain for 3 months. I don't know Spanish. I don't want to, they're not going to be paying my lodging anymore, and I don't want to have to work. I don't know where I can get a job. I don't know the language. So I'm just going to go home. This is what they're dealing with. And this is one reason why we talked about on the trip, what we were concerned with when we got back, is that 6 million people left Ukraine, 10 million people are displaced within Ukraine. Now, some of that 6 million is coming back. The humanitarian aid that a lot of the Adventists were giving in the countries around them, that's somewhat drying up. Their cellars are empty. They gave everything they had in the first few months of the war. If you look in the news now, Ukraine is getting lower and lower on some of the websites and broadcasts. And now the church is left with the reality of that they have thousands across Ukraine, thousands of people that they're taking care of, that they're feeding, that they're looking for clothes for, that they're looking for rides whenever they need to get anywhere. I want to challenge us. I want to go back to that text. Said, yeah, we have a big budget here. We need to take care of our church budget. We have a lot of local ministries. We're going to be highlighting some of those. But as we get into these late summer months and winter months, if you were some of the people we saw there that are working from 6 until 9 at night every day, trying to feed all these people that have no clue when they can go home, and some of them don't even know if their homes are still standing, if they were in occupied territories. Many of them know their houses are destroyed, and the government will only pay them money once they build the house. They'll reimburse it. Most of these people have almost nothing to their name. We're going to be in this for the long haul. We're going to have our little panel on our website that we can give, maybe not huge amounts, just one big-time gift, but maybe little gifts, longer periods of time, and get more people, get more churches. We're talking to other churches. We've invited all the area churches to come here Wednesday night. We're in talks with the North American Division and other conferences. For those of you who don't know, I think I mentioned this already, but between Markham Woods and then we went to the Florida Conference with the division treasurer and the Florida Conference now, we've raised over $500,000 that they have used for the bulk of the rescuing of people and the feeding of people. It's a third of what the world church has given just from this one conference. Amen. We can make a difference. The people of Ukraine want to thank you. I want to thank you. I'm so proud to be part of a congregation that cares and that many of you came, and some of you with tears in your eyes too, you came and said, thank you, Pastor. We feel so helpless when we watch the news. And now, just like the Bible says, we're taking a bad situation and we're overcoming evil with good. Amen. Let us not aim too small. God says it's too small a thing if you're just going to concentrate on Israel. I'll make you a light until the ends of the earth. May God bless us.